Okay. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depending where you are. Can you hear me all right? If you could just say something in the chat if that's the case, that would be amazing. Perfect. Okay. Just a second. Yes. So thanks everyone for joining us. From around the world today. So my name is Haroen. I'm Chief Technology at Luzmo. Today we are just about 6 months after our first State of AI in SaaS webinar. That was in April of 2024. So we thought it is a good time to give an update on what we feel has changed and see what's new, what's upcoming, what's important, and what Luzmo is doing in this space as well. There's time at the end for questions, so feel free to send those already during the session via the Livestorm application, and I'll handle them at the end. So what are we going to cover today? First, I want to give a little recap of the main takeaways that we had last time and see whether they prove to be true in the end. Secondly, we are looking at what has changed. So since April until December, the world of AI has been very transforming. So we're going to look into what changed. And then I want to tackle a point that has become clear also from our internal engineering here at Luzmo, how different engineering API applications is versus building more traditional systems. Now that we get more and more experience building them, it becomes clearer what is different. So I want to share some of those, and then I have a new product introduction that I want to show you. But let's dive in immediately. So last time we had essentially 5 takeaways. One is that AI at that point, but I still believe this is the case today, is a technology platform shift, but not a distribution platform shift. So it means that people essentially are still using the same tools, Microsoft Office, Slack, etc., that they are used to using, and that, for example, ChatGPT is of course a tool that is very much used, but you're not doing the bulk of your work in that. And for now, that seems not to be changing. So that means that AI needs other companies to bring it to market, to embed it in products to make them smarter, but also to verticalize, to make AI solutions that better fit a specific company segment. So SaaS will not go away, in our opinion, but SaaS with AI will disrupt SaaS that is not investing in AI and has no smart features as people come to expect this. Third, we propose that use cases that are not feasible in April might be feasible today, and the same is true tomorrow. So don't get stuck up too much about the capabilities of the current models because they advance very quickly, and I'll give some examples there in a second of what's new there. We also said that while the big players like OpenAI, etc., they remain very dominant in the market, they don't necessarily capture most of the value. Last time we saw NVIDIA is of course one of the big winners currently of the wave, but the same might be true for SaaS players. The OpenAI currently gets about 20% of its revenue from the API usage. So that might be less than you expect. They're on track for about 4 billion in revenue this year. You want to go to 10 billion in revenue next year, but a large part from that will come from ChatGPT usage, so subscriptions, and not from API usage, where the price pressure on them is really high to offer a quite expensive product for them to run at a competitive price. So they are not making an enormous profit, or they're actually losing a ton of money on that at the moment. And finally, we said that agentic AI will be on the rise, and we're seeing that also today. So what is new since then? I think what we all see, I believe the same is probably true for you guys in your companies, is that the expectations of clients are growing tremendously. People expect AI to be front and center in your products and to be behaving very well, in the sense that the performance becomes more critical. People expect high accuracy. They're not they cannot laugh anymore with typical errors that AI models make, and they must be available all of the time. And while perhaps the last 6 months we haven't seen enormous new product releases, we haven't seen GPT-5 being released, don't mistake yourself. The models are improving really fast still. For example, the model that was the #1 performing model on LLM Arena in April. So the model that was #1 on LLM Arena in April, just 6 or 7 months ago, is now actually ranked number 38 on the list. So 37 models became better than that. And the #2 is actually the number 36 at the moment. And so we see that the current best performing model is one that was launched a good 2 weeks ago, that you might not even have tested yet in your production environments. One thing that we believe is a major game changer is that native chain of thought models have arrived. So we talked about this in the previous session, and now it's really in production, and you don't need to do your own work anymore to get advantage of these models. But in September, OpenAI released the O1 preview model. Just a few days ago, Alibaba released the model. And the idea here is that the model essentially can take multiple steps of reasoning to come to an answer, which is especially powerful if you want to build mathematical proofs or do deeper reasoning on problems where you need the extra intelligence, essentially, which comes, of course, at the cost of higher cost and a slower response before these chains of thought have been processed. Another thing is that it's quite clear from experimentation that these models perform worse on creative writing tasks. So if you want to create copy or write essays or whatever, the previous models are still the state of the art. But definitely check out these O1 preview and models. They're pretty impressive in what they can do, and especially if you use them in your products to power more advanced features. And then finally, we see increased verticalization of the models. So Google especially is very active in this, and they released Notebook LM, a kind of podcast as a service. They released GenCast, which is a specialized model for weather prediction, where really the application or the vertical for which the model is built is really deeply ingrained into the training of the foundational model, giving quite good results. So this is an area where doing it yourself might actually not get you the same results as integrating deeper into the stack as technology providers are doing. So when building our own products, we are noticing that engineering AI products is really different from code-driven, as I call it here, development that we are all used to. Very simplified, the problem is essentially this. When you are adding new features or doing bug fixes in code-driven development, you can quite easily reason about how local your change will be affecting the rest of the system. If you add an else case to an if statement, as a very basic example, you know that any of the upstream if statements will not be affected by that change. This is not the case in the case of LLM-driven development. And with this, I mean really embedding the LLM in your application, not developing code through an LLM, where, of course, you can, again, reason about the code output. The problem is that typically, we are used to building products by Jira tickets. So a sub-feature needs to be added, a bug needs to be fixed. And each of these times, you're going to make, for example, local changes to the prompt that is powering a part of the application. The problem is that the changes to those prompts, they are not local to where you are making the change. If you add 50 extra statements to your prompt to fix all kinds of edge cases, it's very likely that the accuracy of your model at its original task, for example, supporting support answers, will be declining quite radically. So how do you work around that? Well, I think one thing is to be very mindful of what you want to achieve with your LLM at the start. So a Jira-driven divide and conquer strategy here does not work. It's very important to start from the beginning with a holistic view of what you want your LLM to achieve. what kind of problems it could run into, but also what kind of task you want to take away from it. For example, if you want your LLM to be providing answers in a different language, for example, a language that the user has configured somewhere in your interface, perhaps that is a feature that you shouldn't ask your LLM specifically to do. If just give the question of your client to the LLM and let the LLM figure out in which language to answer. Is it important enough to spend your precious input tokens there and potentially confuse the LLM? Probably not. Just ask it for the things that are most critical to solve for your application. We also are pushing very hard to have deterministic output. And so we set temperature to 0. We, for example, initialize the LLM with a fixed seed value that is logged per conversation, so that you can replay the exact state and get actually the same output for a same input prompt that you give it. So this helps with testing and reproducing cases. Another area where we feel we have good results is keeping track of the state of a conversation outside of the model itself, and giving the LLM only limited options to advance the conversation. So for example, if you have this flow where a conversation starts, and you can ask, the LLM can ask the client to clarify the problem, or it can make a diagnosis. But at that point, it cannot suggest a solution yet. And at that point, you can give it additional options. While if you give it all of these options at the same time, it might get confused at its original task. This doesn't stop in development. It's also important in production. So there are very interesting testing or machine learning ops frameworks like Org.ai or Base10 that can help you test prompt changes to a large set of input prompts, or even across models. Or they can monitor prompts in production so that you can keep track of your costs, or route queries to the best LLM based on certain criteria, or which client is using your platform, etc. Also interesting is to think about the data management plan from the start. So to log, of course, all of your conversations, but also include feedback that clients might be giving, explicit or implicit feedback, or think about the prompt and the prompt version, which might be changing quite a bit over time. Don't forget to log that part. And the data that you capture this way is, of course, very valuable. It might be used, for example, to replay and debug conversations, but it could also be a source to fine-tune future models, either to make the accuracy better, but also to do, for example, what's called model distillation. So the idea here is that you use a more expensive state-of-the-art LLM for the initial conversations, and you capture their output, and then you fine-tune a smaller, cheaper LLM with those results, so that you get to the same accuracy level, but much faster and cheaper than your original model. Okay, that being said, at Luzmo, we've also not been in our couches. We've been working quite hard at trying to innovate in the data plus AI space. And just last week, we introduced a new product that really puts AI at the forefront in also your applications. And we're calling this Luzmo IQ. So what is Luzmo IQ? Luzmo IQ is a set of components that you can add to your own platforms to power, for example, AI-driven executive summaries of dashboards, but also chatbots, where your end customers can ask questions around the data that you have available for them in your platforms. In this case, data analyst for an e-commerce use case has a number of suggestion questions that are AI generated, where the client can interact with that bot to find important insights and answers. So in this case, we're going to ask it, for example, how my delivery times are evolving. And Luzmo IQ will answer in this case with a summary of the found results. So in this case, average delivery times have shown fluctuations. We see a significant increase in November. And these insights are also supported by a simple chart that that reinforces that message and makes it clearer what kind of order of effect we are looking at. Now, the chart itself can still be adapted. So you have the tools to change the chart type or see which measures our system has decided are important. Actually, it is possible in this case that IQ even builds its own formulas to get a better understanding of your data. So this goes beyond the metrics and dimensions that are available in your original set. Of course, you can ask follow-up questions to dig deeper into the data. In this case, we're going to ask if there are differences by shipper. And indeed, there are significant differences where one of the shippers has a quite pronounced peak in its delivery times. So that's identified correctly and also shown in a pretty clear way without having to dig through more complicated dashboards with a lot of figures to get the same answer. So how does this work under the hood? What does Luzmo IQ do? It's not just a prompt wrapper. There is quite some happening on our side to make this possible. So what happens if you ask a question is that first we're going to find a high-level strategy to answer that question. And so, for example, cost of goods sold it actually can be calculated as the inventory at the start plus the purchases minus the inventory at the end. And each of these metrics could be analyzed specifically because the fluctuation in cost of goods sold could be caused by any or a combinations of these factors. Then, depending on that, we're going to find the data sets that are relevant to answer that question among all the sets that the bot has access to. So this is a semantic search that we are also powering for you. Then a number of data queries might happen that are going to grab data in real time from one of your connected data sources. It can be any of the sources that are available in Luzmo, but you can also do, or the bot can also decide to do semantic search. So we're actually doing automatic data vector embedding of textual data points so that we can also answer questions like which cost categories are very sensitive to inflation, for example. So that's more general knowledge. Or what is the retention rate of my clients that are complaining about deliveries? That's more finding semantic meaning in larger unstructured text. And then finally, IQ is summarizing the data to a very pointed insight that is easily understandable and digestible, and visualized with a key chart to communicate that. And of course, you can export that chart and use it somewhere. And finally, you can continue the conversation. It can either be done immediately within the session, but IQ can also remember conversations for a longer time so that your end customers can come back to it to restart the conversation and get updated figures, for example. And then finally, how is this available? So we're making this available as components and API first. So we have a set of a component library with components that you can use to either integrate a chat widget or a search widget or an executive summary, or even some of the individual components itself. We also make available an API. So if you already have a chatbot, but you want to enhance it with data analysis, then you can add a capability to your existing chatbot to call into our API and get a streaming response of these summaries and the charts that are being generated. So that's just to give you an idea of how Luzmo is innovating in this space. Okay, are there any questions about any of this? And just going to switch here to the chat. So does Luzmo IQ work embedded? Yes. So it's built as an embedded product with these components, so that you can put it in your own data platforms, applications, etc. To add a more intelligent but very accessible layer of data analysis to your clients. And would it be possible to fine-tune the semantic meanings of some columns? You can set up column descriptions nowadays in Luzmo. So each dataset column can have a description, which can also, by the way, be auto generated. So first attempt at the meanings of these columns can be generated, and it can be taken into account. But we're also planning on, in a second version, adding a customizable business context so that you can explain which kind of metrics are important for your clients, or that it is very important to always exclude a certain category of data points that, you know, are in your data model, but they are not relevant for the business, for example. So that's a kind of customization that we are currently still adding. Would it be possible to save AI charts for each individual customer so they can keep going back to their previously generated charts? You can with conversation continuation. You could also save the generated chart and somehow pin it, have a kind of pinning mechanism in your platform to save charts and then always show that chart to them, because apparently it's an important metric to them. We're also thinking about adding more built-in functionality to do this, but that's not confirmed yet, but it's quite interesting to know that there's interest about that. And then where would the prompt sent to IQ be logged? Because it would be useful to get to analyze what people ask about. Currently, the logging of conversations is not yet available to clients, and you also don't see the queries yet in the query logs, but that's definitely something that we want to improve going forward. And then I still have the question, can we train the model to understand our own data sets, columns, etc., to be more accurate? This is something where we see the custom domain context to be a quite valuable thing, because you can explain there more what data sets mean, or provide a data dictionary that can be taken into account by IQ when it's analyzing questions or providing answers. For example, you could use it to change the style that the assistant uses while addressing your customers, so that it matches your marketing defined tone of voice of your platform, for example. Any other questions on things that we've shown here, either on IQ, but also on the building of AI products or changes that we've seen in the market in the last 6 months? One more question is, you mentioned finding semantic meaning in larger unstructured text, and does Luzmo handle this today, and if so, how? So currently in the main Luzmo product, you cannot do semantic search across unstructured text, but as part of Luzmo, we can optionally AI index your sets. So this means that, for example, every hour or another interval, we look at which textual values are available in your data sources, and we do a vector embedding of those data points. And IQ then has the ability to do semantic search across them. So for example, if you ask something like, how many customers do I have that complain about delivery times versus product quality? What we can do is ad hoc classify all of the reviews that are in your data set on being either delivery issue or product quality issue or other, and group on that data and do metrics on them in real time. So with IQ, we are indeed tackling this unstructured text problem. Now, this works for small to medium-sized text. It does not work yet for very large corpuses of text in the sense of having where one row contains very large documents that can have a multitude of semantic meanings embedded in them. So what we do not do yet is chunking of these unstructured text. That's something that we're still investigating. Does that answer your question a little bit fast? Okay, awesome. Any other questions that you have on your mind? If not, you are, of course, free to also still send them to me after the session, either to my email, haroen@luzmo.com, or reach out via LinkedIn or send something to your customer success manager if you're already a customer of Luzmo. And otherwise, if there are no further questions, then I wish you a very pleasant afternoon or rest of your day. And I'm glad that you joined the session, and I hope you find this interesting. So definitely let us know some feedback if you have it.